Hello and welcome to Under the Superscope, where we take an in-depth look at some of the most famous games of all time and try to work out exactly what makes them so good and if they still hold up today, or in this case, where they went wrong. So far this show's been a celebration of the industry's best, but for the first time we're looking at some more negative findings. Super Mario 64 was the pioneer of 3D movement and 3D design, and even today its influence is everywhere. The majority of stages are masterfully put together, and while 3D controls have evolved, Mario 64 still has a really good, unique feel to it. So how does a remake, which mostly has the same core structure, completely squander it? Well, let's take a look at Super Mario 64 DS. If you write a list about all the things that Mario 64 DS has going for it, then it sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Launch title? Check. Updated visuals? Check. Great minigames that show off touch? Check. 30 new stars? Checkaroo. In theory, this game has a lot going for it, yet in 2018, the original Mario 64 is still the one with the larger following. So why, with all the new content, is Mario 64 DS not given its due? Well, here comes the main problem: the D-pad. The Nintendo 64 was the very first system to ship with an analog stick. Sure, Nights into Dreams was bundled with this, but it wasn't the primary controller for the Saturn. Every single aspect of movement is catered towards maneuvering in 360 directions at different speeds, and it's encouraged from the word go. When you start Mario 64, all you have in front of you is open space to move. There's no objective until you work your way towards the castle bridge. Just listen to the sounds of wildlife while you adapt to a 3D world. In the second level, Womp's Fortress, you'll encounter these sleeping piranha plants and signposts telling you to sneak around them. And now that we're adapted to analog movement, we'll just lean the stick ever so slightly forwards and tiptoe past. Now whenever we're in a tight space, we don't just pelt the analog stick forward. We could even spin on the spot like this if we wanted. We have so much control in any situation. We can easily turn in close quarters, we can swim at any angle, and we're able to pull off some pretty impressive jumps. So take that away, and you're left with a very different game. Suddenly, the game that pushed analog movement is now just a shell of its former self. Of course, the DS only had a D-pad, so no matter where you play this, be it the Wii U Virtual Console or the 3DS with the circle pad, you are always limited to just 8 directions. I can move the circle pad all the way around, but it will only respond 8 times. The game is not programmed for 3D movement. Instead, 64DS shares very similar controls with Mario 3D Land. The difference? 3D Land was built around its control scheme. Every angle ensured that 8 directions made sense. The camera was often in a neutral position where holding right on the circle pad can't result in you running in a wonky line. You always have a very deliberate, steady movement, and the control scheme makes a ton of sense for this fixed camera and linear level design. Mario 64 is a sandbox game though, and the camera can't be fixed. This means if the camera isn't perfectly straight, neither will your movement be. 64DS requires a lot more stopping and starting than the original ever did. There are so many moments where you just need to sort the camera out and turn yourself around, because you can't do this in the DS version, because when you do, you get this, and let me tell you, that's caused a number of deaths in my playthrough. This control scheme is not good in tight spaces. Depending on your position, tapping in the opposite direction will usually turn you around, but if you're at an angle, then the character will go in a wide circle. Then there's a problem with speed. Your default speed is a slow walk, however there's a big problem here. 64DS has the same speed boost that 3D World has, where when you walk forward for a while, you get this burst of momentum, and this applies to both walking and running. And so when you try to sneak past this piranha plant, there's a high chance you'll unknowingly wake it up. What you have to do is hold forward for a little bit, and then let go, and then hold forward again. Otherwise you'll get the speed boost, wake him up, and have a bite taken out of you. Realistically though, you're not going to be walking that often. Most of the time you'll be sprinting at full speed, and just like 3D Land, there's a dedicated run button for this. For a game about large, open spaces, I'm a little baffled to why running isn't the default speed, and walking having its own button. You'll spend the majority of your time with your finger on the Y button, and in most cases it's actually easier to move this way. The slide turn is way more responsive than turning around while walking, and we of course get more momentum when running. Unlike 3D Land though, 64DS has other actions. Punches, slides, tongues, these are all on the A button, and so to use them you have to let go of Y and reach all the way over to A, and then go back to Y. For diving, which needs forward momentum to execute, this feels incredibly unnatural. In fact, just holding so many button inputs feels unnatural. You have one finger constantly on the L button to reset the camera, one finger on Y for running, which will also lean on the B button for jumping, a thumb on the D-pad for movement, and you may have a finger on R for long jumps. So you've got something that looks pretty much like this at all times. The DS isn't to blame as a console. Super Mario 64 DS is just way too ambitious. The PSP was the home of 3D games. DS usually stayed 2D for a reason. DS games are at their best when they dedicate themselves to the system's limitations. It can render 3D, but it can't really control 3D. 64DS is clearly aware of this, as analog's actually provided on the touchscreen. Some have adapted to this, and to them I say, well done. But for me, this has the same problems as virtual buttons on a smartphone. You really need physical feedback with precision games like Mario 64. But even if this version were on 3DS or Switch with full 3D movement, I still think it would be seen as the lesser version. Let's get into why. Mario 64 DS opens with a really unique twist, where Mario jumps out of the pipe as usually framed, and then the camera pans out to reveal Luigi and Wario, who have also been invited to the castle. I love this opening, and that they reference the Yoshi on the roof from the original game. This is a great scene. Turns out though, Mario, Luigi and Wario have all been gone for a while, and so we take control of Yoshi to see what's going on. Now here's what I like about controlling Yoshi early. He's the easiest character to start with, as he has a forgiving flutter jump and can deal with enemies easily. He also sets the tone that this isn't just a Mario adventure, and in fact we need to earn the right to play as Mario. The idea works really well, but with the amount of roadblocks, you kind of just want to play as Mario. For instance, Koopa the Quick, the second star of Bob on Battlefield, will only race Mario, and the Little Lost Penguin, the second star of Cool Cool Mountain, can't be carried in Yoshi's mouth. For a game that touts having extra content, we sure are given less options, and Mario can't be rescued until we have 8 stars, which was the exact same number we needed to face Bowser in the N64 original. So yes, there's more content, but there's also more padding. We're made to collect more stars, and the majority of new ones mix in assets from other levels or are simple time challenges. For instance, Tiny Huge Island now has Klepto flying around with a star in his talons. This is the exact same challenge from Shifting Sandland. Klepto also doesn't adapt to the size of the level like other enemies, which is jarring and out of context. He really feels thrown in here. Another instance is Silver Stars. There are 5 of them scattered around, and when you find them, you get a star. Sound familiar? These are red coins, but silver, and there's 5 of them. The only difference is you're told their exact location at all times, so there's really no challenge in ever finding them. Funnily enough, they actually improved upon the red coins by having a pink bob-omb show you their location. But only when you're talking to the bob-omb. So it's a helpful sway in the right direction, but it's not doing it for you like the Silver Stars. The game also loves rabbits, which was a mechanic only used twice in the original Mario 64. Now there's one right at the start of the game, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's one... Okay, there's a lot of rabbits. The point I'm trying to make is 64DS may have a lot of new content, but not much of it feels new. Arguably this stuff devalues the game. Mario 64 had its fill of rabbits, and then when it was done, it moved on. 64DS doesn't get the move on part and ends up recycling so many ideas. Even in its new levels. You know what this level to get Mario looks like to me? It looks like an uninspired jumble of assets, and the level layout doesn't know what it wants to be. It's framed as something linear, akin to the Bowser Battle stars, but it also has the openness of a level like Lethal Lava Land. The Luigi level isn't that bad, as it's hidden inside Big Boo's horns, and thus reused assets aren't quite as jarring. The level to get Wario though is probably the most inspired of the lot. It reuses the snow theme, which was already reused in the core game, but it's a fun linear ride that makes intelligent use of the wind found in Tiny Huge Island without feeling out of place. The boss battles of these 3 are the real interesting part. 2 are really good, the other... The level to get Mario brings back the Goomba King from Paper Mario 64. It has this intelligent fight where Yoshi needs to get behind him and hurl enemies. The level to get Luigi may reuse what's essentially the same King Boo fight, only now we have 2 perceptions, which cleverly enough is a visual metaphor for the Nintendo DS. Even the map looks like a DS. And then there's the Wario one, which is one of the most boring recycles. It's basically the bully fights mixed with Bowser, and there's nothing more to it than that. There isn't really an interesting new level in this game with anything substantial. Sure, I like the Wario stage, but when that's done, it's done. It's not a 7-star stage. This one is very short filler, and this one is mega filler. What a jumble of assets. It's not all doom and gloom though. In fact, 64DS in some areas improves upon the N64 original. Tick-Tock Clock and Womp's Fortress now have a new ground level that can prevent you from falling. The Fall into the Caged Island star has been heavily altered from this small, easy-to-miss platform to this wide-open structure. It might be a tad too easy now, but it's certainly not a frustration anymore. Plunger the sunken ship now actually shows the eel swim out in real time, whereas in Mario 64, you had to swim away and then swim back for it to disappear. Makes a lot more sense now. Some levels have questionable changes, like here in Jolly Roger Bay. There's now just one chest here, which kind of begs the question to why there's a chest at all. The camera is also way more flexible. It would go and refuse to move in Mario 64, but now it's usually far more responsive. That doesn't mean it's more free-flowing though. You'll often have to stop to reposition the camera, whereas in the original, all you need is a simple tap of the C buttons. It has its pros and cons. And then of course there's the visuals. Mario's no longer a round collection of polygons, and Bowser's no longer whatever he was meant to be in the original. I think whether it's an overall improvement is something that's up for interpretation. Sure, the characters look better, but does the game still have a distinct visual personality? I asked people if they could recognize games based on their skyboxes, and far more recognize Mario 64 than Mario 64 DS. This isn't my Koopa the Quick, this is just a Koopa. Mario 64 relishes in its bright, simple, bold colours, whereas 64DS tries to get a little more detailed. But again, maybe this is something that's just a tad too ambitious for the Nintendo DS. And being too ambitious with controls and visuals can be a negative thing. We need to work within and make the most of the limitations we have. Of course, there's also new playable characters: Yoshi, Wario, and Luigi. Unfortunately, Yoshi's kind of done with after the initial 8 stars. There's a few stars made around him, but hardly any. Playing as him though is a great look at how a 3D Yoshi's Island game might work, and it feels good. Yoshi can't stomp Boo's, which stops him from being able to enter Big Boo's haunt. There's also no Yoshi hat that allows anyone to transform into him, so he really feels like the least prominent character. That mechanic is very weird, by the way. I love that you can change characters while in the stage, as it stops it from becoming a Donkey Kong 64, but Yoshi in the form of Wario still makes Yoshi noises, and it just ain't right. Speaking of Wario, he's pretty much useless. He runs slow, he swims slow, he jumps low. Now he does have powerful punches, but that's incredibly situational. You may find him useful against the bullies in Lethal Lava Land, but you'll also likely not have him unlocked by then, which makes it quite redundant. All characters have a unique function, and Wario's is that he can punch very specific black boxes. As you can imagine, it feels very forced and it's not at all unique. Mario is the fastest character, even faster than he was in the original, which makes those Koopa the Quick races, which only Mario can do, even easier. He can also wall jump unlike other characters, which works way better than the N64 version. I can't get myself to do it at all here, but it's as easy as 1, 2, 3 on the DS. Now Luigi! L is finally real, but when Luigi's not breaking hearts, he's breaking games. That propeller jump that you get from jumping on the spin drifts is a natural part of Luigi's moveset. When you backflip, the world is your oyster. Stars that are specifically for Mario can be reached faster than Mario can even dream of. Rainbow Ride is now Rainbow Glide. It is broken as all hell, it feels cheap, and yet I can't resist it. Luigi can also momentarily run on water, but there's not a single use for this. Yoshi's able to breathe fire by eating a flame or hitting a power-up block, which is a little boring as other characters have unique power-ups that aren't part of their natural movesets. In the original, you had the flying cap, the metal cap, and the invisible cap. The flying cap returns, which only Mario can use, but the invisible cap and metal caps are just power-ups for Wario and Luigi. The cap mechanic ends with the flying cap. What's weird though is Mario actually has another power-up which comes from the exact same box. With this, he inflates up like a balloon, just like in Mario World. This usually doesn't really add anything, but I like it here in Big Boo's haunt. That star's no longer hell to get hold of. I'm not a fan of the character-specific power-ups. In 64, Mario could seamlessly do any of these things, and one star actually mixed together the metal cap and invisible cap, which was really clever, and now it just feels divided and tedious. The thing is, no character handles quite like Mario did in the original Mario 64. Some jumps can be a struggle for a few of them, and others clear them with ease. Check out how Mario can barely make this jump in Mario 64, but has no trouble doing it in Mario 64 DS. The different characters are often unwarranted, which makes it all the more jarring when the game feels like they are, with character-specific stars. Perhaps going the Super Mario Bros. 2 or 3D World routes of them just being options for different playstyles would have worked better, but instead it comes across as a bit of a chore changing characters, especially when the challenge is as tedious as Wario punching a black box. Where I think Super Mario 64 DS truly thrives is when it's not being Mario 64. The mini-games in here are a ton of fun, and as a DS launch title, relying on dual screens and touch was a smart move that hasn't aged a day. You can still spend a ton of time with these, and likelihood is, if you played New Super Mario Bros., you'll recognize most of these too. As a launch title, this whole package was impressive. It showed off what the system could do graphically, it showed off touch and dual screens. It's just Mario 64 was not designed for a D-pad, and it lost so much when it made the transition to the DS. In some areas, they improved upon the original, but I think the cons heavily outweigh the pros. There's a reason the original is still revered today, and that's because it's simply fun to move around in Mario 64. It's fun just to hop around the castle grounds, and I don't feel that with 64 DS. When Nintendo remade Ocarina of Time, they didn't really change a thing. The graphics were updated, but they didn't add more cuckoo fetching minigames or a new dungeon or anything like that. Ocarina of Time didn't need more content because it was pretty much perfectly paced as it was, and I think that's true of Mario 64 as well. So even if some of the new content is for the worse and some is for the better, it's all a moot point because the controls just aren't good enough to be Mario 64. Sure, it showed off what the DS could do, but it also highlighted why the PSP was better for 3D games, and that's likely why there aren't that many DS games graphically comparable to its launch title, Mario 64 DS. DS games are best played on a 2D plane, and playing through Mario 64 DS today, I can't possibly say the game hasn't aged. It's not even really about age. This game was always flawed, but perhaps the wow factor of a portable Mario 64 was enough to sustain it. Should you play it over the original? No! Should you play it after? Well, it's worth a shot, but in my opinion, this is an even worse Mario platformer than Mario Sunshine. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more episodes from Under the Super Scope and other things gaming too. Catch you next time, bye!
Listen, let's bake a delicious cake for my heroes. Yoshi!